in 2 minutes and 30 seconds. And this is the 12th night of Christmas. This is the broadcast for the very last night of Christmas in 2023. We're still celebrating it in 2024. So, those of you who haven't seen my broadcast before, this is the only broadcast, the only broadcast on Twitch and on all of internet that's in with brainwaves. You just don't see these anywhere else, and with good reason. They're hard to set up. It took me a long time to get these things working, and even now, it takes a lot of technical prowess and hard work to get them working. It's one of the most difficult things, one of the most difficult technical things I've ever tried to do. And they're working. Just as I'm talking here, I'm just doing the last minute preparations, and the brainwaves are looking really good right now. You'll be seeing them shortly, like one more minute. So just be patient, one more minute if you can do that. I know it's hard, but in this age of instant gratification, it's hard to ask people to wait for a minute, but if you do, you will enjoy. So, a couple more technical adjustments here. This is incredibly complicated. Getting these things up on HTTP, getting the brainwaves going and to appear on HTTP. I kind of think we're going to have them going here, though. Should be starting really soon. Really soon. What, 45 seconds or less? So let's just do the last minute, very last minute checks here. I got my best boys, I got my key grips and camera people, crane operators, boom operators, all working hard on this, and they're getting into positions and getting ready for when we really start in seriously with the live broadcast, and it's going to be very soon. Now we're just getting ready, doing the last minute preparations. We're connecting right now. We're connecting to Muse, and it looks like we're going to be all set. Let me see what's happening now. Doing a last minute verification. Okay, now we're back to the Twitch studio. And it's kind of like the countdown at NASA. We're going to count down from 10, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4. Oh, we got to have camera. We got lights, but we don't have camera yet. They normally say lights, camera, action, right? I guess that's it. I think we got it. Oh, you see the brainwaves up there, right? Are they pretty clear? We got the black background today. Until today, we were moving the brainwaves always in a kind of another kind of a background that was a little lighter colored. But because a lot of my viewers, they love to just zone out and watch them, and the graphic format was not quite so conducive to that because we had some gray areas to the left and the right. But now with this black area, it looks like the waves just appear out of nowhere, cross the screen this way, and then appear into nothingness on the other side. And as you zone out and look at those, it's going to be pretty intense if that's what you want to do. The other people, they chat and follow the games and everything and don't just look at the brainwaves the whole time. But I like to look at the brainwaves. Oh, did I mention this is the 12th day of Christmas? The very, very last day of Christmas for this year. And we've been doing a series of broadcasts all through Christmas. And if you've been following them, we've been learning a lot. We've been doing King's Gambits, we've been doing Carol Cans, and we're going to do the same thing tonight. So, without any more ado, and that's not to say goodbye because that would be like adieu, right? But this is without any more to do in terms of setting up and stuff. We're going to move in now to the gameplay. This game took place a long, 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 long time ago. I got to find it here. I had it here on my screen. Let me see on my other screen. It's by Philador. We played a game by Philador last night, and we're going to play another game here tonight by Philador. Am I showing you this? Okay, so anyway, there's the information. Francois Philador. And wow, that was a long time ago. 1700s. 1700s, this game. Okay, I'm going to click back here to show you now. Going to show you. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger so I can get the exact date here. It says Francois Philador, and I want to see the date here very clearly so I can tell you. 1749. Annales de Jeux des Échecs. Wow, so it's some sort of a chess game played a long, long time ago. So long ago that it was before the American Civil War when the North fought the South. The South had like they wanted to have slaves in the North. They wanted to protect the right to have slaves and they rose up against the North as rebels and lost, right? Okay, so let's see. Francois Philador versus NN. Analyse des Jeux des Échecs. Okay, so that's 1749. NN, by the way, is not, you might think it's this really modern avant garde name by somebody way back in 1749. Like Prince today, he just has that symbol, but NN just in this case refers to no name. It's an abbreviation for nameless um, nameless person. That would be NP, but I think it's just no name. So I think that's going to be fun. Let's click through this and see how this is going to go. Okay, so we got the brainwaves up. Everything's working great for the last day of Christmas. And oh, my camera is telling me something. What? Oh, he wants me to remove the glasses, so I can do that. Like, there's not that much glare. They sometimes have like these really bright lights that they put in front of my eyes, but today they've got these soft. I guess they invested in this new kind of like soft white umbrellas and things, so it's not nearly so much glare. I appreciate that. Who's ever handling? I don't know who the director is. We got camera people, we got lighting people. I don't know who did actually designs the set, but they did a good job. That tonight things are not nearly so glaring as before. So let's go ahead and play through this game. Philador. Philador was a really, really famous person in the history of chess, perhaps the most famous person. He'll still be remembered even after Magnus Carlsen is forgotten. Philador's name will stand strong in chess. And I think even Magnus will agree with that. So far, so good, right? We're doing good. We got the brainwaves up. I'm really, really surprised how good the brainwaves are acting tonight and how good that black background is for the last day of Christmas. This is really wonderful. This is the best broadcast that we've had in a long, long, long time. This is totally incredible. Um, it's kind of strange though that we don't have any chatters yet. I was kind of like waiting a little bit until we get like the first chatters chiming in. When the first chatters chime in, we'll start the game because until we got chatters, so, I got right now I got 59 viewers, and apparently they're all just zoning out on the brainwaves. They love watching those things appear from the darkness on the right or the left and move across and into the darkness on the other side. They love watching those things. And they just keep watching them. I don't even know if they're listening to me talk. They just zone out looking at those. But if there's anyone listening out there, it's definitely you're gonna show up on the chat, right? So we'll wait until we get some chatters to go through the game here. It's a beautiful game, by the way, by Philador, played in 1749 against NN. If I put, if I switch, I think I can do that. But I don't need to do that because NN doesn't really have an identity anyway. I was going to explain a little bit who NN was, but there's really no explanation for that. It's just like a nameless person that Philador was playing back in 1749. That's the opening position that you can see right there. Can you all see my, wait, I got to get this up here so you can all see my mouse and everything. Okay, now you can see my mouse right on the board. They used the same opening position way back then as we do now. And okay, last night I got into some trouble and it was pretty bad. Um, I kind of like lost hope. And that's another reason tonight we're going to do the game by Philador, and we're also going to do a poem by Emily Dickenson about hope. It's very important that we do some cultural things on the channel because this is an instructional channel. And if those of you that might not know about when Bobby Fischer was playing Boris Spassky, this was way back in the 1970s, but Boris Spassky said, well, he doesn't have any chance of winning. He's just, this kid who doesn't have training in things like cultural things like art, history, opera, other things that he says. Well, we Russians are trained in, our minds are highly trained. But he had a point. He lost against Fischer, but he did have a point that if you're going to do good at chess, you should also be good at a lot of other things too, because it's all synergistic, right? You're good at one thing, you're good at mathematics, you're good at music, you're good at sports, you're good at talking. All of those skills can be used by the parts of your brain that are active during chess, right? So all of these things come into play when you're playing chess, and I think poetry is one of the things. And if you can hear me speaking English, it's because you understand English poetry, right? So we don't have any chatters yet. As soon as we get the first chatter, we're going to start into the game. And I think the chatters will be arriving really soon. I don't know what time it is in Serbia right now, but every once in a while we get chatters from Serbia. Oh, we get them from Brazil too. Um, so before we do that, let's head on over. I'm going to put in another address here. I'm going to put this thing, Emily Dickenson, so we can study this poem before we play. So there you see it right there. It's a Google search, and I'm glad everything's working out very good. You see the Google search there, and it'll only take us a second to go to the Poetry Foundation, I think, which is the biggest thing on the internet in terms of poetry. It's very I do a lot of poetry. I use poetry a lot in for various reasons. And this is the most reliable site in terms of poetry. It's called Poetry Foundation. You can see it right up there. Okay, so we'll go through this and talk a little bit about this poem until we get the first chatter. When we get the first chatter, we'll head into the analysis by the analysis of the game by Philador against NN back in 1740. It was 49, right? So I can verify that. Yeah, 1749. King's Gambit accepted. It's called Cunningham Defense Burton Gambit. So analysis du jeu des échecs. Des échecs. Yeah, that's what it is. So okay, so here we go. Hope is the thing with feathers. You can all see that, right? So remember what I was talking about? This is chess instruction, chess training, and we're going to train first with the poem so that we can go into the chess. And you're going to see the brainwaves in real time as I'm doing this poem. So this will also help for those who are checking out the brainwaves and trying to correlate them with things. Because I really identify with this poem and very viscerally, and this talk about the bird and how it perches in the soul, and the concept of some evil storm trying to abash the little bird, but it can't. All of this resonates very much in me. I'm sure it affects my brainwaves a lot. So I'll read this through as we're waiting. We're still waiting for the first chatter, and then we'll start the analysis by the game by Philador. I think I mentioned, right, that today is the 12th day of Christmas. It's the last day of Christmas of this year. So it began around the solstice. Christmas used to be, a long time ago, it was a celebration of the solstice. It involved rituals of calling the sun back, because during the year, in the wintertime in the northern hemisphere, the sun sinks lower and lower and lower in the sky. And so they would have a ritual. I don't think that everybody believed it. There were a lot of cynics way back then, and they were saying, well, this is not true, that we all know the sun's going to come back anyway. But they would have this ritual. They would put the Christmas tree there because the Christmas tree was green. It was one of the few trees that kept hope and didn't lose its leaves in the winter. It kept hope. It conserved its hope all during the winter. That and the mistletoe, of course, which is something that people kiss under during Christmas, and kiss also symbolizes hope. Like you hope the person's going to like to kiss or whatever, and have a happy life and live happily ever after you kiss under the mistletoe on Christmas. So hope has a lot to do with Christmas and the solstice. And okay, did I mention we're going to go into the analysis of the game by Philador, 1749, as soon as we get the first chatter. And we don't have the first chatter yet. We're still kind of like waiting here. I think it's going to be soon. A lot depends on the time that it is in Serbia, because I have chatters that appear from Serbia. I have chatters that often appear from Brazil. And, all of these people are going to be here soon, I think, chatting. And I know I got viewers, because I can see right up here on the display 53 viewers. But the problem with my channel, well, it's not a problem really. It's just like an extra challenge, and challenges are different than problems. But with my channel, I can have, now I've got 57. I got 57 viewers, absolutely nobody chatting, and it's because I'm the only channel And absolutely the only channel on Twitch or YouTube or anywhere on the internet, on Lead Chess or anywhere. I'm the only person playing chess with the brainwaves. Okay, so the brainwaves are right there. They're in plain sight. A lot of people will just zone out, look at those, and they're not going to chat. They're just zoning out, kind of like you and I zone out, um, watching our favorite sitcoms or something. Do people still watch sitcoms in this day and age? They used to watch sitcoms back in the 1970s, 80s, and 90s. I don't know if they still do. They probably don't. They probably have new things, right? People watch. I don't know if they watch nowadays. They watch TikTok or podcasts or something. But people used to watch. Well, you do the same thing. That would be a good example of someone zoning out. Somebody watching cat videos on TikTok. I know people that do that. They just watch them for. They could watch them for 30 minutes. They could watch them for 40 minutes or longer. Some people actually watch them for hours. They're just there. Um, they have a verb for that. It's called cat watching. Cat watching on TikTok, and the Egyptians worshipped caps, no cats, and they used to say that people say nowadays that in the future, archaeologists and historians of the future will look back on this era and they will probably say that we worship cats because that was our favorite things to look at on internet. So just by judging by objective standards, we do look at cats a lot. So this is the poem Hope. Okay, so before we do the game by Philador to train our brains for chess as a wonderful kind of like a synergistic training to augment our gray matter in the in the neuronal configurations there and the energy. You got to get the energy up of what they call the cerebral cortex, right? Which operates like a lot of different things. It also operates poems as well as it does chess. So we'll study with this poem to train for the chess, right? The two things go hand in hand. So this is going to be interesting. It says here, instead of paging down and scrolling down, I'm going to push one time on there. Okay, now you can see everything. Now when I go back to the lead chess, I got to remember to push Control plus because then you'll see the entire lead chess, including the computer analysis graph. If I don't have everything calibrated, the computer analysis graph goes haywire in lead chess. Lead chess is a very user-friendly software and everything where it displays and you can see it very well, but that's the one weakness is the fact that it's hard to dimension the thing, especially for Twitch, where you see the game board and the computer analysis graph at the same time. Right? That's the one thing. So we got to remember push the control plus when we go out of this poem. So Hope is a Thing with Feathers by Emily Dickenson. Without any more ado, and that's not to say farewell, but without anything to do, we're going to do this thing. Hope is a Thing with Feathers. So Emily Dickinson was a poet, and I wouldn't say she's a poet that didn't know it. She knew very well that she had a lot of talent, but we didn't know it, or as to say, the society around her didn't really know it because none of this stuff was published before her death. She wrote these things all on slips of paper, put them in a box, and they were tied with a ribbon in her attic when she died. Not really her attic. I think she lived together with her family still and everything. So they were in the family's attic, and published after her death, but she was a real genius. Look at this thing, Hope. Now, before I read this first line, I want you to, I want to give you the context of this. She's obviously playing off from the thing by Alexander Pope, right? Who said, "Hope springs eternal in the human breast." The next line is a little bit cynical, but I mean, hope springs eternal in the human breast, which is a very positive idea. And we have other proverbs in English like "Where there's life, there's hope," right? So she's playing off of this collective idea of hope being something eternal in the human breast or soul, and also that not only that hope springs eternal, but that hope is something that we all need. This plays in very well with chess because in the worst positions, you got to have hope. And James Mason in his book, I have it right here, I'll show it to you. James Mason in his book, The Art of Chess, he has in the, you can all see it there, right? The Art of Chess. Um, this was written more than 100 years ago, but in the preface, he talks about it. I'm probably not going to be able to see it here. I'll just look randomly at a sentence. And no, I can't really see it here. So I'm going to paraphrase it because I was hoping with luck I would find it, but I can't. And just paraphrasing him, he said, like, when you're in the worst position that you can imagine, things are all going against you and you have no way forward. You're looking at your pieces, there's nothing to do. So take heart and imagine that who knows, maybe your opponent's in the same condition. So I think he was also referring to the idea of hope. And Emily Dickenson was referring to that as we were talking about Alexander Pope too, and popular lore when they say things like, where there's life, there's hope. So let's go ahead and read this poem. It's quite interesting. You can see that's the entire poem right there. It's 3 stanzas. So here we go. Emily Dickinson. Hope is a thing with feathers that perches in the soul and sings the tune without the words. It never stops at all. And sweetest in the gale is heard. And sore must be the storm that could abash the little bird that kept so many warm. I've heard it in the chillest land and on the strangest sea. Yet never in extremity it asked a crumb of me. I think you notice a little twist she does there at the very end. She does that little twist in the last 2 lines. If you look at the rhyme scheme, you got feathers, soul, words, and awe. Awe is a partial rhyme with soul. Feathers sounds a lot like words. They both have the sound and the z sound at the end. Feathers, words. So you got like A, B, A, B, and then here too, herd, bird, storm, warm. That's A, B, A, B. And then here you have A, B, and then B, B. That's a recurring pattern in English poetry because when poets start to repeat things, when they start to give like a different rhyme scheme, it means it's the end. So, and it's interesting here that, like in sonnets, you have a rhyming couplet at the very end, and here it starts here. Why does she start early? She has a reason for that. She was a real craftsperson when she wrote these poems. So we got to analyze like why she started at C instead of at extremity. Now, if you can figure that out, I just like all the chess channels. If you watch Agdamator and the other places, they always pause a little bit and say, "Okay, see if you can figure that out." So let's see. I'll pause for a little bit and see if anybody can figure that. See if you can wrap your brains around why they would do that. You can just put it there in the chat, like why you think she might have changed the rhyme scheme starting at C. Okay, you can't see it. Okay, so I'm kind of like just like Agdamator, who has put all these things through Stockfish already before he even starts the show. I know why she did this, and I'm gonna explain that to you why she did that. Because Emily Dickinson, you understand, was not a person who really traveled to a lot of seas. As far as I know, I think I was reading about her biography. I think she traveled like maybe once or a few times, but she basically was kind of a home person. Just like lived a very insular life in her house with her family. It was kind of like a small town. It wasn't like a big city or anything where she lived. And you could say that she didn't get out that much, although she did exchange some missives with sort of a pretty like what we would call like somebody maybe she would when she wrote that poem about wild nights, it was like she had this person in mind. Let's put it that way. Um, it's like a person that she was hoping to get something going with, and don't know that she ever did, but she didn't travel to the strangest sea. That's just what I'm. That's it. I'm got off on a tangent there, but there I'm highlighting here to where she never really got to a strangest sea. Except she did. Okay, I contradicted myself there. I said, okay, she never got there, but she did. She got to the strangest sea because I had a neighbor where I grew up. I had a neighbor. Her name was Mary Miller, and she had never traveled outside of the country. But she told me, I've never physically traveled, but I read a lot. I read a lot of books, and she used to go to the Carnegie Library, and she would say, well, I borrow a lot of books there, and I try to get the books about other places, other countries, other times, and I've traveled that way. And she really did. She traveled. You can pay a ticket on an airplane. You sit on the airplane. You get off at the place. You get an Uber. You go to a restaurant. You get the food. You pay the tip or not pay the tip depending on the place. There's a lot of places that don't charge tips, and you have your experience. Did you really leave your home? Maybe not, because there's an old saying: you can never escape from yourself because wherever you go, there you are. And if you just take your old baggage with you and you're sitting there and like eating or whatever, and you have the same mindset, you didn't really travel. And it's hard to travel like that some people are just incapable of ever traveling, even when they take a so called trip on a plane, go to a place. But Mary Miller traveled. That's what I'm telling you. She traveled because she read the books, she saw the lines, she immersed herself in there, and maybe it was vicarious, okay, but she really experienced those places. So she was a traveler. She was a global traveler. And The same thing can be said about Emily Dickinson, especially when you look at the next line. And yet never in extremity. Extremity is the utmost limits of something. When you're in the extremity of despair, when you're in the extremity of happiness, you're at the utmost limit. And maybe she never traveled physically, but in her perception, in her mindset, she traveled a lot and she had a lot of experience. She had a very rich experience and she knows what she's talking about, okay, in terms of hope. Because I'm sure that Emily Dickinson, and if she were here right now, like sitting beside me or behind me or on this side, I'm sure she would concur with what I'm telling you right now. She felt life to the utmost. She went this way, that way. She was immersed in life. She was richly immersed in life. And whether she traveled a lot or whatever is beside the point because, I mean, physically, because she experienced life in very intense ways. And she not only knew what hope was, but she knew what hope was because she had experienced despair. Hope is the opposite of despair. So that's why she was able to write this poem. You have to read between the lines, and that's why I was talking about this change in the rhyme scheme here. Because how does she follow C? Immediate with extremity, right? So she's suddenly reminding us that she knows the extremities. She's been there. She knows as much as you or I and more. It's reflected, it's evidenced in her poetry that she has been there. So yet never in extremity it asked a crumb of me. And that's why I said this was a strange twist, because this poem is a combination of something very serious and something with a little comedic twist at the end. Because she's saying that the bird of hope that Alexander talked about being in human breast, she compares it to a little bird. It's interesting because a lot of people say, well, hope is this siren that blares out in the midst of calamity. It's not. It's like if it was a siren that blared out in the midst of calamity, everybody could hear it, and nobody would lose hope. But a lot of people lose hope. Why? Because as Emily Dickinson teaches us, it's a small bird and a quiet, not exactly quiet bird. It's always chirping, always singing, but it chirps at what she says. It sings the tune without the words. So tune says it's chirping. It has a melodic sound, right? But she adds this phrase without the words. Why does she talk about that without the words? Why would anyone say and sings the tune without the words? Okay, when you're singing, normally when people sing, they have words, right? Like normally they do, but sometimes they don't. Like Karen Carpenter, for example, when she sang that song, um, something about yesterday once more, where she says, every sha la la la, every whoa 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 still shines. Right? So every ding-a-ling-a-ling that they start. So these are not words. There's a lot of things about music that music transmits in a wordless way. And there's also a reference here to the ineffable. because some things are beyond words. Can you really convey hope to a person in words? Suppose that you had a friend who was in despair, who really was in despair, who wanted to end, not that they wanted to end their life, but it's like their life has already ended in their perception. They just, there's nothing more. It's like they're just existing without purpose, without hope, and they're existing in a state of despair. Can you convey to them a sense of hope through words? Can you do that? Through words? I don't think you could. Maybe with a hug you could, or just by your presence being there. But hope is something beyond words. And Emily Dickinson mentions that here and sings the tune without the words and never stops at all. Now, at all is a kind of cliche. People say, like, well, I would, I don't like that at all. It's just like a thing you tack on to the end of a phrase without any meaning. But all of these words count. She's talking about, she's adding this little phrase with a meaning. And she's saying it never stops at all, but there's a double intention here, a double meaning. Why? Because at all means like at everything too. Besides this idea that we have idiomatically of at all, there's this idea of like doesn't stop at anything. And sweetest in the gale is heard. Now there's quite a few people who speak English that have never heard of a gale. It's a very strong wind. And if you've ever been near a Coast Guard station in the United States, they have a gale flag when the wind, they only put that when the wind is above 60 miles an hour. And that makes a lot of noise. If you've ever been in a gale wind, you know that there's a lot of noise because it's blowing in your ear canal. In sweetest in the gale is heard. So it's like a sweet sound you can hear even in a gale. But it's just a little bird, right? But you can hear it, but obviously you have to pay attention. You can't. You need to listen. And sore must be the storm. And of all this poem, I think that word right there is the most enigmatic. Sore must be the storm. Whoever heard of a sore storm? Whoever heard about that? I think what it's talking about is it's a painful storm, right? And sore must be the storm. It's a painful storm that could have bashed the little bird. And now she finally names it because up here in the beginning she just said it's a thing without feathers. Now she tells us after it's singing a tune that could have bashed the little bird. What does this little bird do? It not only sings a song of hope, but it keeps so many warm. It's a wonderful little bird that is hope that's in our soul. It perches there, and we have to listen to it, but it keeps us warm. Okay, so I hope you liked the poem. I think that was a lot of fun. We're going to do the analysis of Philador. Remember, the poem was just a little side thing, waiting for somebody to enter the chat, because I was telling my viewers that as soon as we get a chatter, we're going to do the analysis of the game by Philador from 1749. It's a King's Gambit, a beautiful King's Gambit. If you want to see the King's Gambit, um, just jump in there and chat. I have how many viewers right now? 60 viewers. And they're all, you know what they're all doing? They're zoning out on the brainwaves. Nobody's chatting. Why don't they chat? Because they're zoning out. If there's anybody here that's not zoning out, who's actually listening to me, jump in on the chat so we can go. I'll immediately go to the analysis of Philidor. Otherwise, we'll just go back here and continue this poem because I think I enjoy this as much as chess. we'll see. Anyway, it's a poem about hope. It's a thing about feathers and hopes and strong winds and strange seas and cold places. And like I say, the last two lines seem to be a kind of a joke. I don't know why she wrote that. I think she could have done a little bit better. I wouldn't say better because I think it's a little twist, and it's interesting when poems have a little twist. But I wouldn't say the last. It has to come. It's actually, I think she's just pointing out maybe it's not so bad like I was thinking. It's saying that this is a nice little bird because it helps us and it helps us without asking anything in return. Right? And you can't abash this. The sorest storm, the most painful storm, cannot abash. Which you know what abash means, of course. It's to disconcert someone. Like the little bird's just going to keep chirping through the storm. Doesn't care because it's hope, right? Hope springs eternal in the human breast. So, should we do another poem? We're gonna do some chat. I don't know what time is it in Serbia. I was hoping that we'd have a chatter by now, but we also had some chatters here recently from Brazil. Um, I don't know if people just said hello or something. We could do. We could go to the Philador. But everybody's just zoning out, watching the brainwaves. Oh, did I mention it's the 12th day of Christmas? There's 20. Begins on the 25th, right? Let's count them up, shall we? Let's count them up. So you got 25. That's number one. That was the first day of Christmas that you all celebrated. Then you got 26. That's called Boxing Day in the United Kingdom. Then you got 27. Doesn't have a proper name except it's the third day of Christmas. And then 28, 29. Okay, that gives you 5. And then 30, 31, 32. No, 32, no. 31. And then after 31 comes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, we counted 2 times 5 plus 2. Anyone that knows about base 10 in mathematics knows that when you get to that number, you're at 12. Okay, this is the 12th day of Christmas, and it's the last day of Christmas. So I think people celebrate a lot on the first day of Christmas. I really think we should celebrate the most on the last day of Christmas because the first day of Christmas is wonderful, but the last day of Christmas marks something really special. It marks the transition of Christmas into the rest of the year. So I think we can celebrate that we're leaving Christmas and going into the new year. So without any more ado, I'm going to go back to the the Lichess. I think I can do that just by going here and clicking the back button. Let's see if it works. No, back once again. There. That may be why nobody was chatting. People were coming and thinking it was a poetry channel, and it's not. We were doing poetry only to prepare our minds for analysis of this game by Philador, right? 1749 as you watch the brainwaves, okay? 1749 against NN. And I don't know. I'm pretty patient, but my patience is kind of like running out to try to get this chatter. I think I'm just going to go into the analysis. What do you say? Should we do that? We should. Should we do the analysis? Let's do it. Where shall we? Maybe it'll give us some good luck. Maybe we'll have some really good luck here, and we'll be able to just analyze this and get some chatters at the same time. So The way I do my Twitch is because I don't have the very best computer in the world, I have to admit. I have to overlay the game onto the Twitch. I don't know how many people know that trick, but you really substantially decrease your need for bandwidth if you just overlay the browser that you want to transmit. You just overlay that into the middle of your Twitch screen. I don't know if I invented that or what, but that's what I do, and it works pretty good, even with a pretty simple pretty simple computer. So the brainwaves are working great. Wow, we got the delta, the theta, the alpha, but the beta, the gamma. So far, they haven't been jumbling up a lot because we haven't been engaged in a lot of like really weird chess positions. It's when we really get engaged in those chess positions that they start to do some really weird stuff. So they might start doing some weird stuff as we analyze this game by Philador. So let's take a look at this. I'm going to start clicking through this. The first position. There we go. That's pawn to king 4, as they say. Black responds in kind, and white has some options now, but Philidor chose that one. That's the king's gambit. He's offering the pawn. The pawn can take that, no problem, or so he thinks. He takes it. Do I have any obvious attacks? Mm, not that I can see, but let's keep playing through this and see what Philidor was planning. So the knight comes out. The game we analyzed last night, he brought his bishop out to here, inviting the check by the queen, because the knight was. Let me go back one move so you can see how it was last night. Last night, Philidor moved his knight out, his bishop out here, and invited this check, and then just moved his king over and had a strong position. We saw last night that Stockfish, even now, more than 100 years later, ranks this as basically a draw for black and white, except white has this move, attacking the queen, and some other resources. So, but this game tonight, Philador did the next most popular move in the King's Gambit, which is the knight here, because it prevents the queen coming out. Okay, so this is the knight variation of the King's Gambit instead of the bishop variation. So then this is a popular move because black is getting ready to castle, and also the knight is protecting this black diagonal. But now the bishop attacks the black diagonal. It can in one move. And if the knight takes the bishop, then the queen does the same thing it wanted to do before the knight came out. And if the queen gets to here with a check, if the bishop's not here, the king moves over. But suppose the bishop was here, he'd have to move his king up. Or he would have to interpose his pawn, which is not good because you interpose the pawn. You see this pawn is here. And so pawn takes the pawn, and then where are you at? You got the queen here on the other side of the pawn eyeing the king. And when this pawn advances or it puts you in check and then comes down here and makes a queen or something, it's like that's why a lot of people they don't recommend the King's Gambit, especially for lower levels players. But that's why I have this channel because if you watch my videos, you'll realize that it's completely safe if you just pay attention to a few dangers, you might say, risks of the King's Gambit as white. And so, okay, so the bishop came there, eyeing the attack here on the diagonal. And now white basically ignores that because he's got some other attacks. He's going to attack this. And see if the bishop comes, if the knight comes up to here, it's like a double attack. And if he can get rid of this pawn and castle, it's like a triple attack. The queen can also attack here, or if this pawn moves from over here. So basically, the king's gambit for white in the classic variations boils down to an attack right here on this pawn, which a long time ago was called uh, King Bishop 7. And now they name it like this: A B C D E F. It's called F7. So the King's Bishop, the King's Gambit boils down for white in the classical variations on an attack on F7, and that's what white is doing. He's getting ready to castle. And there you go. Philador is playing according to wonderful thinking, wonderful principles, positional principles, just like we were discussing. He comes out there, attacks on the black diagonal. And now white has some interesting possibilities. Stockfish, nowadays, more than 200 years after Philador played this game, Stockfish is recommending that the king move over. That's what the little white arrow means here. Whereas in the reality, Philador moved this pawn up. But you'll see it didn't make a big difference. Look at the Stockfish analysis down here, in numerical analysis. When Philador makes that move, Stockfish drops him from here. He's already a little bit behind. He gave up that pawn, but he didn't lose a whole pawn. He got some positional advantage. And drops him from here to here. No big deal. Like if you're playing an edgy game, why not do it? And Philador was a master player. That's what he did. And you see, it's still pretty much an even game. And I would even give white the advantage here because he's playing an edgy game and he has a lot of possibilities of really going after black in a big way. So the pawn takes the pawn. And now you might think, whoa, this looks serious. That the pawn moves up here, puts white in check. White has to move the king, and then the pawn takes the rook, makes a queen. Things are looking really dire for white. This pawn and the bishop with the looking through the pawn is really putting a lot of pressure on white. But Philador has a good solution. He castles. So from a king position, king gambit position where he was sacrificing a pawn, he now sacrificed another pawn, and Philador is going to sacrifice. Well, he's actually only sacrificing two pawns because after pawn takes a pawn here, obviously he could retake with the king with a knight. So, but he's after gambiting one pawn, he's gambiting another at least. So let's see what black does. Oh, it's a check. This pawn, in the very beginning of the game, already at move 6, this pawn is already putting a strong attack on the king, and it's already on the 7th rank, just one move away from queening. Not saying that he could do that, but it is right up there, close to queening. And black has that going for him. He advanced the pawn really far away. So should white take the pawn? A lot of people would say, well, yeah, he's close to queening. Get him off in there, like remove him. He's like powerful. He's really advanced. So let's look at Philador's move. He brings his king into the corner. Now, Philador, this actually makes sense. And if you look at Stockfish, he didn't decrease by doing that. He actually went up a little bit. By bringing the king into the corner, he's actually using this pawn as a kind of a unassailable barrier. Black cannot take his own pieces. If this was a white pawn, black could take it, but black cannot take his own pawn. So the king is impervious to checks now, for example, by the queen along this last file. Because if you've ever played Minecraft, you know about obsidian. The opponent's pawns are like obsidian. When you can get them in front of you, they're like your ultimate protection. And the king is really protected behind this pawn, at least in terms of this file. He still needs to be careful about this diagonal, this white diagonal, but because white has control of this diagonal with his queen and his bishop and I mean his rook and his bishop, and any attacks on this diagonal will have to be later because if the bishop comes out to here, white can block. It's going to take a little while to get this. So white could be open to an attack by his queen in this position, but only if black has a lot of time. And that's what Philador is going to play for now. He's going to play to try to win this game as quickly as possible before white can drum up an attack along this white diagonal. So let's see what black does. Black moved his bishop back. I don't know why he got so scared. He should not have done that. The bishop was in a good position. If white had taken, black could have taken to good effect with his queen. And also, you see, it was like, I don't know, the bishop just got a little bit scared and went back, and suddenly look at the stockfish. Stockfish suddenly gave white like a big advantage here. Really big advantage after the bishop retreated. Black should have, if we replay that, you can see Stockfish will show where he should have done. The bishop was here. He's protected by the queen. Black should have just developed a pawn, asserting himself in the center, opening up space for his queen and for the white bishop, which can come out, pin the knight and everything. But black made a mistake, brought his bishop back, and now white. Look at this. Philador, the edgy player, I'm sure he had a stronger move in mind, but he played an edgy move that dropped him, but that gave him more possibilities. Let's put it that way. So that's what he did. Boom, right there. Come down there with the bishop. Put the king in check. And it's a pretty nasty check because if the king takes the bishop, the knight comes out here double check because he's doubling, or he can come here actually if he wants to double check because see how the rook is also on the file? And on a double check, and you can verify this, I'm pretty sure this is always true. On a double check, the king has to move. Because you cannot interpose a double check because you're getting checked by two different pieces. You cannot interpose. And you cannot take the piece that's attacking you because you can't take two pieces at the same time. So the ways to get out of check are interposing, take the attacker, or move. And so the king, in this case, has to move. He can take the bishop right now, obviously, but I'm saying if he takes the bishop, he opens himself to a double check where he'll have to move the king. And after he moves the king with the bishop here and the knight here, he moves the king wherever he goes. Where can he go? You have to go back here, and then like really weird things can happen. The queen could come up here with a check. You can interpose the pawn, but remember the knight's going to be here, and the knight takes the pawn. Then what? You got the rook here. You got the knight took the pawn. If you take the pawn there, that's checkmate. Can you see that? Let's just go back and so you can see what I'm saying. So I mean, let's go ahead actually. So let's suppose the king takes the bishop. So you see that's double check. The king has to move. And he could go over here. Maybe that's his best move because let's see what Stockfish says. Hey man, you're there. Satjack, I was gonna do a research I was planning to do a research today to know how to pronounce your name, the real way to pronounce your name. And I was thinking, oh, that's going to be so cool. I'm going to pronounce his name in the Serbian way, and he's going to be so. Sajak is going to be so impressed, and I don't know. I didn't get around to it, but maybe another time I'll be able to pronounce your name. But we're going through another game by Philador here. Sajak. It's not your real name. Well, that's a lot easier. Is the Z pronounced like an S or like is it um, a voiced, I guess they call that an alveolar sibilant, Zorin, like a Z. Okay, so that's a voiced Z, Zorin. Cool. All right, so Zorin is so much easier. Yeah, I make an association with Zorro, and then you just have Zorin. So much easier. Well, I don't know. So that's great. So, um, you're the first chatter tonight. I have 61 viewers, and everybody's just zoned out on the brainwaves, and nobody's chatting. And they're zoned out especially because I don't know if you noticed, but I have new graphics tonight. The brainwaves appear over here in the blackness, the total void, and they move across and then they disappear. It used to be gray and gray, and now I have it totally black, and I think it's like freaking people out or something because nobody's chatting at all, except for you. Yeah, Zorro. Zorro, did you know that Zorro is Spanish for fox? Because Zorro is a fox. He thinks in a kind of a fox-like manner. In most of the movies, like this foxy male character too, but I mean, he has a very foxy mindset. That's why they call him Zorro. Yeah, even today, people look at a fox in Spanish. If you're in a Spanish-speaking company, they say, "Oh, there's a Zorro, there's a Zorro," And so you're thinking about the real Zorro, and they're talking about an animal. Yeah, that's pretty cool. So I think what I'm going to do, because you're the first chatter, I'm going to go back and I just discussed this game up to now, and we'll just click back to the beginning. We're not very far into it. Nobody's going to care. Some of the other people that are watching the brainwaves and zoning out, they won't care if we start over because we're only on the eighth move anyway. So it's a game by Philador, 1749. There you got the opening position, and it's a King's Gambit, accepted. And you're not going to believe this, but it's a game where Philador really shows. Yeah, okay, okay, I got one chatter that's going to be right back. Okay, well, I'm going to be right back too. Look, I'll show you. Look, me, I'm going to be right back. Just a little bit. Be right back. No, I won't do that. I'll just keep playing a little bit. Who knows? We might have some more viewers out there. So this is a game where Philidor really shows he knows how to use this game to like he really tweaks this game. Let's put it that way. He tweaks it in ways that are unexpected. Totally, totally, totally unexpected. That's what we're going to see. So this is Francois Philidor, 1749, and playing at King's Gambit. And okay, I'm in the Twitch studio. I'm trying to get all my games aligned here. Okay, now I got them all aligned. Okay, I got this game out here. Got it all lined up. Move that down just a little bit. Okay, I didn't change a lot there. Oh, and we got the brainwaves moving really good. And for those of you who are just joining the channel, I would like to remind you, I'll take this opportunity to remind you that today is the 12th day of Christmas. Today is our 12th broadcast during the Christmas of 2023 that began in 23 and extended into 24. And we've done broadcasts all the time through Christmas, this being the 12th day, the 12th day of Christmas, which is, by the way, the stanza of the 12th day of the 12 days of Christmas song that nobody remembers. Why? Because the first day you repeat like how many times? You say once and then 12 more times at least. Um, I don't know if it's, I guess it's 12 times that you repeat the first one, and then the second one you repeat 11 times, and then the 12th one you only repeat one time. Nobody remembers. Who knows the 12th day of the 12th day? What did the singer of the 12th day of Christmas song? Do you remember the gift on the 12th day? On the first day of Christmas, my true love gave to me a partridge in a pear tree. Okay, we all know that. On the 12th day of Christmas, my true love gave to me 12. What? What is it? It's not swans swimming. Is it lords a no? I don't think it's lords a leaping. It's not ladies milking. It's really hard. Like I say, it's hard to remember because that's the one stanza you only sing one time in the song and nobody remembers. So, okay, let's get back to the game on Philador. It's the 12th day of Christmas today, by the way. 25 is first, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, 12 days of Christmas, and today's the 12th day. So let's go ahead and click one more move. There we have it. King's Gambit. You're back. All right. Zorro is back. Zorro is, I don't know, that could be the name of a movie, right? The Return of Zorro. Zorro is back. Did Zorro ever say, I'll be back? I'll be back. I think that was some other movie person, but Zorro is back from Serbia. So okay, so Zorro, we don't have to start at the beginning of the game because you know how it begins. That's the King's Gambit. Philador playing in 1747 against an opponent by the name of NN, the nameless one, you might say. This is interesting. Stockfish is actually, look at this. Okay, great. Yeah, send me one because tomorrow's the 13th day of Christmas. And we're going to do another broadcast on tomorrow, the 13th day of Christmas. I'm going to tell you why. Because a lot of people think there's only 12 days, right? But there's not. There's 13 day of Christmas because at the time that the 12 days of Christmas, you have to understand some history. At the time that the 12 days of Christmas were instated back in the medieval period, there were laws for bakers that they could be fined if they didn't sell the proper weight of bread, and they didn't have scales, accurate scales back then. So if somebody came in and ordered a dozen breads and there was a standard how much a dozen bread should weigh, they would always give 13 so that they couldn't be arrested. And it was serious business back then to be arrested as a baker. You could be thrown right into the dungeon. And so what happened was that they would give 13. And this was the same time in the medieval period that we started to celebrate the 12 days of Christmas. So really the 12 days of Christmas was at a time when a lot of people understood this concept of the baker's dozen. So a lot of people just celebrate one more day because they thought, well, who knows? Maybe we should celebrate one more day. So really, they used to celebrate 13 days. So if you really want to do the proper Christmas, it's 13 days of Christmas. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it. We're gonna do it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to download the PGN and do the stockfish. But first, we're going to continue this. We're going to do that tomorrow. We're going to examine that game tomorrow because we got this thing prepared. We're going to continue with this. So it's interesting that stockfish right now is saying, "Come out here with the bishop," inviting the attack by the king by the queen. At which time the king has to move over. But Philador does that because that's. Oh, but you're telling me that it's a Philador game, huh? Is that a Philador? You say it's most famous. Oh, not his most famous. It's the most famous Pawn Storm game. Yeah, because there are Pawn Storm games. Ah, okay, okay. Ha ha ha. It's by this other person, right? Board on Ice. Yes, Board on Ice. A few days ago, I was channeling Board on Ice. I don't know how that happened, but I just started to feel like I was channeling Board on Ice, and I started to get all these like really insights exactly how Board on Ice would be analyzing things. It was pretty amazing. Famous game. Okay, so let's continue this one with the knight comes up here, preventing the queen from doing this check. Okay, so now. Okay, so look at Philidor's opponent is also playing very like a fox, right? So the 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 bishop is out here. It's going to give the check. If the knight takes the bishop, then the queen takes with the same problem, right? That it's attacking on this diagonal with the pawn here. I can't interpose because the pawn. You know how it goes. But Philidor finesses this thing. Watch what he does. He ignores the check again, comes out with the bishop because he's focusing on this square. King bishop 7, f7. And there you go. His opponent comes out with the check. And instead of sliding the king over, which he could have done to grand effect, and Philidor knew this, he's saying, you know what? I've got options. I could slide that king over and be in absolutely no danger, but I'm going to really defy you. I'm going to move this pawn up. He moved the pawn up. Now watch what happens. This is so amazing. And Stockfish is still giving a pretty even game. Philador is playing very good, even theoretically by Stockfish. Pawn takes pawn. Now, a lot of people would say, well, you're going to take the pawn or what? Okay, so there he goes. He castles. Boom. Um, Philidor has already sacrificed one pawn. The pawn took the pawn. He castles, and now it's going to be pawn takes a pawn. Philidor knew that, but there he goes, off into the corner. And I was explaining this just before Zorro chimed in here on the chat. This is exactly where we were. I was explaining how your opponent's pawn in front of your king is better than your own pawn in front of your king. A lot of people don't realize that. But think about it. Your own pawn in front of your king is susceptible to attack and the opponent can take it. But tell me, can your opponent remove his own pawn? The pawn cannot move back. And unless you move something here, he cannot move to the side. And it needs to sit there. And your poor opponent cannot get it out of the way. If you've ever played Minecraft, the opponent's pawn in front of your king is obsidian. If the queen cannot attack now along this rank because you've got um, unassailable protection in front of your king. Now the king can still be attacked on the white diagonal, but Philidor is going to make sure that that doesn't happen. He's got various resources. First of all, this pawn, that pawn can be buttressed by this pawn. He's got his white square bishop. He's got his knight here protected already by two pieces. So he's thinking very positionally. Philidor was a very good player And he has his king in a wonderful position right now. And look at the line. The line right here is 0-0. Even though it looks like black is 3 pawns ahead, Stockfish is still giving white 0-0. So that means that black has won 3 pawns, but white's position, because of all his resources, positional resources, is worth 3 pawns. So let's click ahead and see what happens. Now that's black's major first mistake. Until this point, he was playing very consistently. He decided to bring the bishop back. He should not have done that. He should have brought the pawn out, opening up and leaving the bishop there because it was not really in danger. And he brought the bishop back. Stockfish shows this. Wow, Philador has the huge advantage now. Okay, let me just back that up. I almost forgot to mention. Philador could have played very conservatively now. He's got like a big advantage. There's a lot of resources he could have done, but after sacrificing 3 pawns, he's going to really shove it to this guy. You know, like look what he does. Boom. Sacrifice. Instead of 3 pawns, now it's another bishop. Now, the king could take the bishop, but already black is thinking, oh my god, like things are not looking very good for me. Philador probably knows what he's doing. Um, that was black's move. He didn't take the bishop. And yeah, I guess he was like a little bit freaked out. And I'll tell you why he was freaked out. I would be freaked out too. Let's look what happens if black takes the bishop. Look what happens here. Double check. Double check. Now, on a double check, the king has to move. Oh, I thought I had a new follower there, but I think it was something else. So the king has to move. You cannot interpose. You cannot take the attacking piece because there's 2 of them, and you can't interpose because there's 2 of them. So the king has to move. Where can he go? Now he can't go here because of the knight. He can't go anywhere here because of the rook. He could go here, but he's probably doesn't want to come out. And a lot of people would analyze this and they would just say, well, suppose I bring him back to here. The queen comes up check. It's basically checkmate unless black does that. And then this really, really causes problems for black. It's going to be checkmate in a million different ways with one move, and plus he's attacking the rook, and it doesn't look good. I mean, he can bring the knight up to here, but then, you know, the queen can do, you know, white has a lot of resources here, like a lot of resources. So basically what black did, I'll go back to show the real game instead of this little continuation that I was just analyzing. So black actually, so he took the pawn, black moved over there. Now Philidor suddenly could just bring the bishop back, thinking, okay, I'll take my losses. I mean, I'll take my winnings and be conservative, but no, he did that move. Brings the knight up. What's the knight going to do? Well, we'll see. Black brings his knight out. Now Philidor brings it back. And it's saying here that white could make some more opening moves, but instead Philidor decides, well, I'm just going to come down there threatening your rook and see if you screw up. I think that's basically what Philidor is doing at this point. He knew the best moves, but he's just saying, well, maybe if I put you under more pressure, who knows, maybe you'll screw up. So to avoid getting his rook taken, his opponent moved his rook over. And don't know how I got all of this stuff down here. I want to go back to how it was before. Let me see. I want to just go back to Where is this? Computer analysis. Okay, there it is. I don't know how that got clicked. Um, so anyway, he moves his rook over here. And now Philador comes up, forces the knight out with the pawn. Instead of moving the knight, this pawn came up. Pawn takes knight, pawn takes knight, knight takes pawn. Bishop comes out. Now that's a very interesting move, like threatening the queen. Queen moves over. Bishop moves back. And, there you got the continuation of the game. And I don't know, from here on out, it's kind of instructive, but it's just kind of like take, take, take. And then at this point, black resigned for being an entire rook behind without any resources. So, what do you see? Good game? Kind of like a nice analysis of the first positions, right, to show the opening of the. Just it won't take a lot of time with this, like 30 seconds, just to show the openings of this type of a king's gambit. Okay, the king's gambit there, king gambit accepted. The knight comes out, the bishop comes out to do the check on this diagonal, and white continues according to the plan, attacking down here. Bishop comes. White has several resources, but even with this move, which is more iffy, sacrificing another pawn, and then even after sacrificing the position, uh, the bishop, Stockfish is giving him like a huge game after sacrificing. So let's say if black took the bishop, let's just see what would happen if black took the bishop. If black takes the bishop, white is still ahead 6. So really strong game by Philador. Okay, let's do it. Let's do that. Yeah, I'll do it right now. Let's analyze the game, like you said. This is the pawn storm, right? If I click here, will that help me? I mean, will that help me do it, or what do we do here? Okay, I know what to do. I'm going to bring this over to Stockfish. I've done this before. What I do is I put here view, and then after I view it, I put the cursor there and I push Control A and then Control C, and then I go back to. I'm going to go back to the lichess. I didn't go back to the lichess. Where's the lichess? I'm sorry. I screwed up there. So, okay, go back to the lichess here because I clicked. And okay, here's the lichess. So now I go here, click on the 3 bars, and it's a thing called import a game. Something here. Import a game. Puzzles, lichess, create a game. I'm going to make it big because when it's big, I know where it is. So, okay, it's big. And then I go here, Tools, Import Game. And then I click it down here. Because I make it small so I can present it good in my Twitch studio. But then I made it big so I can import the. Oh, wow, look at that Pawn Storm. I guess it's already in my Twitch studio. You can see that, right? This is great. Oh, wow. Zorro, I'm really glad that you sent this. This is this is kind of the most amazing pawn storm I've ever seen. That is a pawn storm. Like, wow. This is something. You missed earlier before you arrived. We missed a. I did a rendition of a poem by Emily Dickenson, and by coincidence, she was talking about a storm in the poem, and then suddenly you appear, and we have a storm, a pawn storm. So that's quite a coincidence. Um, so let's go back here. Okay, I'm going to go to the beginning of the game. Okay, I think I got everything set up now to analyze it, right? Um, everything's good now. I got everything set up. Got like a 2-second lag or something for some reason, but I guess it's okay. Well, 2 seconds for me. I guess it's 1 second for you guys watching. So let's see. Kasparov called it the most beautiful game ever played. Wow. So I'll take it from Kasparov. I mean, the guy knows what he's talking about. So let's see this. I used to think that the most beautiful game ever played was that one that the guy. You ever hear that story? The guy put it in his pocket. It was like this amazing queen sacrifice in a king's opening, and then he met a master and said he had it in his pocket. I mean, the master met a guy later in life. And the guy told him he had it in his pocket and he carried it with him everywhere. So let's go ahead and play this game. Um, that Kasparov says is the best game ever played. Paul Morphy opens game and Anderson and Immortal games are also there. Okay, let's do it. This is a game by who, by the way, Zorro? Who was playing this game? Can you introduce this for us? You said it was Anderson, right? Because Anderson was the player we were covering in the I think the seventh and the eighth day of Christmas. Oh yeah, Board on Ice. Yeah, the guy I was channeling the other day. Yeah. Okay, let's do it. This is Board on Ice. Let's do it. Here we go. Okay. I would call this a King's Gambit. I know a lot of people have another name for this, but for me, it's a King's Gambit. Um, the pawn is temporarily blocking the knight is temporarily blocking the advance of the pawn, but everything I play is a King's Gambit. Okay, so let's look at this pawn storm, shall we? Forget about the King's Gambit for now, because this really is. They had another idea when they played this. That looks like a strong move. Also good, but no problem. Like just takes. Pawn. Okay, everything looks very logical so far. The pawn comes up, forcing the move of the knight. That looks very good, developing the king side and also, bearing down on the king on a proverbially weak square. Pinning the knight. I would say that white has looks like, even though I had a preview of this, and I know that black's going to have this powerful pawn storm. White's looking really good here. White is looking really good. You know what I didn't do? I'm going to go back because I didn't import. Just going to do this one more time. I'm going to import with the computer analysis because without the computer analysis, I'm just like a little bit lost. So I'm going to go here, Tools, and Import Game, paste the PG in, and I got to put Request a computer analysis here. And then we'll go back and then okay, that's the same game now. Okay, now we're all set. So, okay, that's an interesting computer analysis, isn't it? Look at that. Black played a very consistent game, just like down, 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 down. Right there, he made like a little move that wasn't so good, but it didn't give white an advantage. So let's click through this now and see. We'll click through to where we were. So white moves up. And so far, everything looks just so normal, right? Like this could happen almost any day. This queen move was a little bit different, and now I think we maybe are on the area where they say we got a new game on the board because they're okay, white castles, which is kind of like predictable. Now already I'm starting to see this was played by first in official world champ. Okay, he was the unofficial one, right? This is so weird. This pawn storm looked like it had more pawns at the beginning when you first showed it to me and I saw the ending. It looked like there was more pawns than two. So that maybe that's why Kasparov said it was the most beautiful game ever played. Right now we have a really nice strong center, which is something to be. It's a goal that people have, like, well, if I can get a pawn center, and people don't always capitalize on that, but it's a pawn center. But this is going to be a very instructional game to show that a pawn center, how strong a pawn center can be, because they turn it into a pawn storm. And here, the pawn comes up. Obviously, it can be taken en passant, but black doesn't do it, losing his ability. And obviously, he didn't want to take it either because maybe he's already planning the pawn storm. Okay, so this looks good. White is kind of like blocking. Suppose let's just imagine that he doesn't like this strong position in the middle, in the center position. He's thinking, well, I'll block it with a knight, and if he takes a knight with a bishop, I block it with my bishop. I basically have this pawn storm stopped. Okay, we're gonna do the dramatic thing here where white is trying to stop the pawn storm, even though he doesn't maybe even see it yet. So, and White's thinking, you're not going to storm me, man. I got the knight out there blocking you. I got the pawn out there ready to take the knight, the bishop, the queen. Yeah, and black, Zorro is telling us now that black has two dangerous central pawns marching. They don't look like they're marching, Zorro. I got to tell you. I'm telling you, in my analysis here, white has them stymied. They're not going anywhere. And the knight even has other things in mind. It can come up here, attacking that rook, and this pawn is on this diagonal. So I'm just saying, well, he probably won't do that. Yeah, I think his idea is to stop the pawn march. Well, let's see how he. It's going to be interesting how black can march these pawns, as you say. There you go. So now he's got a third pawn marching. They're going to march big time. All right. The parade of pawns, right? They're going to come up there. Going to see how it works. So White, I think, is playing a really wonderful game, like activating the queen with a check and gaining a tempo. Stockfish is saying to move the pawn out. I mean the knight out of the pawn march. But he comes up here attacking the queen, which also looks good because it's skewering the queen on the rook. I don't think black is going to take the knight here and lose a queen, right? So it seems like a good move. And now he takes the rook. Oh, now that was kind of surprising for black. Well, not really. I mean, he could take the bishop or the knight, but if he takes the knight, he's continuing the idea of the pawn storm. So you're supposed to be consistent in chess, so makes sense, right? So there's that coming up. Now White's playing a very, very ingenious game too. Instead of just like doing the instinctual thing and removing his bishop, he attacks a bishop. So he's saying, well, take my bishop if you want to, but I'll take your bishop and have a pawn just about ready to queen. On the last rank, they always queen on the last rank, but protected by the file next to the last rank with your king there. So if the pawn comes up here, it's going to be like check against the rook, and if the rook takes the queen, then the pawn takes the, you know how it goes. So this is a very strong move with the pawn coming up there. They're really, I understand why Kasparov says this is a wonderful game and a beautiful game because black is saying, okay, yeah, take my bishop, but I'm going to attack over here and do something different you didn't expect. And now white again does something he doesn't expect, lifts a rook up there. Queen comes down with a magnificent strong move. I mean, checks are they're going to march big time. checks are something you have to respect. You have to somehow, like, you can do, like, these players have been doing whatever they wanted to, and suddenly black comes in and says, okay, I'm going to force you to do something. You got to get out of check. And okay, what did he do there? Okay, brought the king, the bishop out of danger. And also now white finally brings his bishop out of danger after it was sitting there like 5 moves. Oh, wow. So black is, hmm, black moves his pawn up, and obviously it can't queen because it's protected by 2 pieces and protected by 1. But he moves it up so that it can't be taken. He's going to reserve this possibility and maybe get some more reinforcement from these other pawns, possibly by the black square bishop too. White moves over. White moves over to protect the pawn's advance. It's not a bad idea, especially if you're playing with a clock. The pawn comes up, attacking the rook, and we're getting closer to the pawn storm now because the pawns are advancing. I'm very curious how this pawn is going to advance because black wants to activate all its pawns so that they're working together in unison. What happened there? Let me go back. Okay, so bishop takes bishop. Pawn takes bishop. And now white doesn't look so strong. The queening space of the pawn is defended by bishop and knight. And white looks more vulnerable here to me suddenly because the queen comes down here. When the queen comes down here, you always remember that the rook, you don't have to take the queen, the rook can come down. And you got 2 rooks against the queen. But if the rook comes back, yeah, and then the queen's going to be taken, and if you take the queen, pawn takes, and the rook takes, you lose a queen and a pawn for 2 rooks. It's not good. So let's see what happens now. So yeah, he advances the pawn. Pawn is coming up closer. Oh, that's great. Just like we were talking about before. So white, against all odds, completely proved me wrong. Where I was saying, well, that pawn has to advance, but it doesn't. The queen advanced, attacking the king on the back row, and now the pawn is in the position to get activated into a queen. So that's very surprising and very good. So black can't take the queen because then you know how it goes. And if white takes the rook, that's bad too because white takes the rook, bishop takes, that's check. The only way to stop checkmate is here, and then pawn advances. And then whatever black does, white just takes their checkmate. So it's looking strong, really looking strong for white right now, except apparently black has a resource because stockfish is still very heavily for black. And there's what it is. That is so amazing. The bishop comes there, and that's the big resource, huh? But that's strong. Yeah, that is strong. The queen can't take the bishop because he loses a queen, and then the rook is suddenly blocking the pawn. And now the queen kind of like realizes it's ineffectual and it retreats, which is an iffy move. There's a question mark there. Now black activates his queen on the black rank. Just like white was trying to do here, black comes down, attack on the queen, on the king through the rook, and white cannot take the queen because of the pawn. Rook takes queen, pawn takes queen, rook checkmate. So that's a very strong move. Oh, that's what I was saying like 2 moves ago or 3 moves ago. If the queen comes down, then the rook retreats here. And now what does the queen do? The queen's in danger, right? That I can see, the queen's in danger. Rook takes queen, pawn takes rook, and that's a pawn and a rook for 2. So let's see what happens. Oh, there we go. That's the pawn storm. This pawn comes up, protecting the queen. The rook takes the queen now. Now the pawn takes the rook, protected by another pawn. Now the rook takes the pawn, and then, you probably wouldn't do that. But anyway, it just in a hypothetical scenario, you got 2 pawns that are going to queen now, which completely changes the dynamics. This queen comes back, and it didn't change anything. It's not certainly not a mistake. It was a good and solid move. Rook comes over because it was being attacked. So black is basically saying, well, I've got you in a wonderful position here. I got my queen here. I got my 2 pawns. You attacked my rook. I'll bring my rook over here and see what you do next. What does he do next? A questionable move. Let me just go back because he went from -12 to -17. White didn't have any other choice really. He's just thinking like, what am I going to do? Oh, I thought he took the queen, but he didn't. He just moved his rook over here, blocking the pawn. Yeah, he didn't take the queen because if he takes the queen, it activates 2 pawns, and it's not good. Oh, and then the other pawn. That's how he's going to bring that pawn up. The other pawn that was back there now suddenly, because black has this wonderful position, can't really be taken, and he has time now to bring up the other pawn. And white tries to defend with its queen. And he really going to, your instinct is to defend on the white because he's going to move his pawn up here, but then you can't take the pawn because the queen takes your queen, and you traded a queen for a pawn. So he doesn't know what to do. He brings his queen up here, and that's not a mistake though. And now black suddenly, after waiting there for so long with a stable position, he says, "Well, I'm tired. I'm gonna just go ahead and take you because you've been waiting too long. You had your chances, and there you go. That's the pawn storm. That is the ultimate pawn storm given you tonight by our viewer Zorro from Serbia. That's the most beautiful thing that I've ever seen. And I guess Kasparov said the same thing. How in the world did Black get these 3 pawns up there like that? That's just incredible. And he also has a very safe position. He's got this pawn protected. He's not like going to succumb or vulnerable really quick here because he's got this pawn protected. He's just got what he's basically got is these 2 pieces back in protective positions, and he's got 3 lowly pawns against a queen and a rook. But obviously, anybody that knows about chess realizes that this is a winning position for black because three, three pawns on the 7th rank are going to be stronger than the queen and the rook. And then white resigned. You see, there's nothing I can click because obviously white can't do anything. What can white do? I'm going to say if white moves over here, like trying to get the rook out of danger, that falls to check here, and then the king here, and then that's checkmate. So he can't do that. If he tries to bring the rook over here out of danger, it's just check, and then it's going to be he takes there and then checkmate again. And if the queen takes a pawn, saying, "Well, I'm going to remove one of these bad boys," um, instead, just take the pawn. So then what happens? How is that? Let me see how that happens. So the pawn comes up there, And Stockfish is saying that the queen should take the pawn. Now let's look. What is the next move? If the pawn takes the rook, the queen takes the pawn, and then this pawn cannot advance. Oh, I see. It's so easy. This pawn comes up. That's check. And now if the rook tries to take that, then it's checkmate. It's checkmate. Yeah, that's exactly right. Pawn to f1. Zorro always knows the move. I've learned that. Like anytime I'm asking, like, what is the next move? Zorro types it out. So that's it. The pawn storm of all time. The pawn storm to end all storms. The perfect storm and the perfect pawn storm. That was amazing. I'm just going to back up. I was saying back at this point, I'm going to put him back here because I saw the original position. I was thinking, how do these two pawns become a pawn storm of three on the last rank? It just doesn't look possible, but Black did it. And backing up just a little bit more, um, right there, right there, those two pawns right there are the beginning of the pawn storm. One of the greatest chess games ever played and most beautiful. Okay, I'm going to put the challenge out to all our viewers. If you got a more beautiful game, let us know about it. We're going to be on tonight. It's the 13th day of Christmas, and I was explaining about the baker's dozen and all that. It really is valid. It really is Christmas tomorrow, and it's going to be our last Christmas broadcast. So if you have a more beautiful game, come to the broadcast, put your game out here, we'll analyze it, and then we'll vote what we think is the most beautiful game. So that was a lot of fun. I'm thanking everybody for joining. It was a great time, really, really great time. And I know it's very early in the morning in Serbia, and it's wonderful that you wake up so early that you can be part of the whole situation. I'm wishing you the best day in Serbia, and we'll be back tomorrow for the 13th day of Christmas. So, Merry Christmas and good night, everybody.